it's weird because we live in the age where technology and information is readily available, but it's being misused. I mean, there are malignant forces who will use this technology to bombard your head full with misinformation. It's done on all sides, from governments to whatever political or religious direction you want to think. Everybody does it. And at some point, I think people are just tired of it. They just, they want their security, and whoever is going to give it to them, that's what they will do, and they will not blindly, and they will not question it. But you could also see with arguments online, I mean, it's just very rarely that you can have a discussion where people are, maybe disagreeing, but listening to the other, listening to facts, or say, here, this and that, it's like, it's black and white, it's like, this is this, my heels are in the sand, and the line is drawn, and that's that.
Greetings, friends. What is up, and welcome to another episode of Into the Necrosphere. This week, I'm catching up with Rogier Droog, aka RSDX of Hell Militia. He and I spoke about how the band survived lockdown. We spoke about the reasons for their extended absence from the recording studio, the making of their fantastic new record, Hollow Void, as well as his sideline hustle, snake breeding, which came as a bit of a surprise over the course of the conversation, but certainly helped enrich the chat no end. But great dude. We did get into a few spicier topics, as you can usually expect from this podcast, but a lot of fun having him on. Straight after that, I'm going to be talking about some new music. This week, I am reviewing the new Aldorfrea record, Thy Kingdom Cold. And then, of course, I will also be doing my usual news, rants, and react segment. There are new tracks by Dying Fetus and Oceans and various others to scrutinize this week. And, of course, we may also delve off into a couple of other topics as we go along. But thank you very much for checking out the podcast. If you're new to Into the Necrosphere, make sure that you hit the subscribe button on your platform of choice, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Apple. I post new episodes every Tuesday, and if you could like, share, and leave me a comment, that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks to everybody who has done so already. Sometimes I'll read some of those comments during the news segment as well, so if you do leave a comment, you might get to hear your name on the podcast of podcasts. Speaking of which, once you are done with this episode, if you feel lost, confused, and as though your week is going to be directionless without any further excellent quality content to keep yourself occupied with, then fear not, because my fellow horsemen of the podcast apocalypse have you covered. On Monday, you've got Brandon Legion of the Horrorwolf 666 podcast. On Wednesday, Mike Hill presents Everything Went Black. On Thursday, Mike Hill is back with Necromaniacs. He is also joined by co-hosts Jeff Kashid and Mike Scondado. And then over the weekend, my friend Carl Hikara does Soul Knox. Great dude, great having him as part of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse. And all of those shows mean that most of your week is covered with outstanding, high-quality, non-woke entertainment, which is exactly why you tuned into this podcast to begin with. Final things, friends, please follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you really love the show, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store and pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie. Next week, I have got one of the biggest wishlist guests that I could possibly have dreamed of when I first started this show, Gregor McIntosh of Paradise Lost and Strigoi fame. A good 1 hour, 15 minutes that conversation ran for, and I must apologize in advance to whoever's interview slot I cut into when I was talking to him, but just such a fun conversation. That's going to be coming your way next week. The week after, I've got Scott from Fallujah, and I've got a ton of other great guests coming up. So a great time to discover this podcast if you've just done. Either way, sit back and enjoy. This is RSDX of Hell Militia. I will have to congratulate you first and foremost on a excellent comeback record, but I was kind of thinking, is it a comeback or is it a reset? Because I know this is your first album with Hell Militia.
Yeah.
And it's also the first record the band have put out in 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird because for me, it feels like a continuation, but I can understand that for many people, it's a comeback. So there are many factors why it took so long, but either way, I already joined the band before Jacob's Ladder was out. It was already recorded, but the former singer was already gone. So I joined the band immediately after the release and started touring. There were some other lineup changes in the meanwhile. And but we kept on touring until at some point, we took a little break, came back together like 2018, 19, wrote the album basically. But we have already been playing together, and the last person joined was like 2014. So to us, it was like just a reset and a continuation. Which is in my head, but I understand that for a lot of people, this is like a comeback album, because it's been 10 years. And if you're in a country that we haven't played ever since, then it's of course, it's that, so yeah. But that being said, we did treat it like a comeback album because we were very aware that there were a few important people gone, they have been changed. Especially with the vocalist change, people are going to pay extra attention always. I'm aware of that. So we did very much choose to, like, if we come back, what is the album going to be? It has to be 100% recognizable as Hell Militia. It was extremely important for us because otherwise, you might just start a band with another name, do that. And what would it be? So we did want to get like the really raw essence of the first album canonization back, because I was always a big fan of that dirty sound that they have. Also with dissonant riffs of Jacob's Ladder, and add some new stuff, So yeah, it was a bit of a conscious decision, and the rest just kind of flowed out naturally, that it came out so old school actually in the end. So.
Yeah, I definitely said of the record, when it first came out, my immediate impression was sometimes you want to hear, elevated black metal, like, the last Blood Ausnort record, and sometimes you just want to be smacked in the face. And you want to kind of feel that rebellion and that fuck you kind of attitude. You want to be reminded of Satan. And I was like, I thought Hell Militia does that just absolutely perfectly. Uncompromising, raw, primitive. And I think, in terms of my own experience of the record relative to everything else that Hell Militia has done, there's a real anger on this album that stands out a lot more than on previous Hell Militia records. Some of that I'm led to believe by what I've read, so you can cast some additional detail around this, but I'm led to believe that it was a reflection, or at least the way the record came out was a reflection of what you guys all experienced individually and collectively as we were all kind of locked down during 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it was a diary of everything that happened, and even before 2020 and 2021, we had people, gone, people dead, people disappearing on the other side of the earth. Everything that other bands normally sing about, it happened to us. Then there's that raw, unforgiving atmosphere, of a disgusting city like Paris, which comes in play. There's all kinds of excesses. And and the last few years was also because the pandemic came. It was weird for us because we were supposed to start recording like early 2020. And we were literally like in the rehearsal room when the world closed down on us, which was quite weird, because, on the countryside, life pretty much went on. But to see a city like Paris like closed down entirely, which runs our restaurants and bars open 24/7. It was surreal. So, okay, some of us live in other countries. So our drummer had to go back to Sweden all of a sudden. I had to go back to Holland. We waited out. We could only start again, I think, in the autumn of that year, do the drums first, do the guitars and the bass like over the winter in Paris. And when it was my turn to do the vocals, we could only do it in July because there were travel restrictions. We couldn't drive into France yet because everything was still closed. There were some other problems. So yeah, that took a little bit longer, but I think in the end it was good because there was a lot of personal shit also happening in that time. And just everything, I was a mess, and one angry mess. So everything went into the lyrics, we took a little bit, I almost want to say the typo negative approach and put it into black metal, take all these real life experiences and use like the black metal metaphors and go over it. That's why also the lyrics are sometimes so bleak and so nihilistic, because that's really the headspace I was in over there, and we're lucky to say I'm not in that headspace anymore because I'd be dead otherwise. But it did make for interesting lyrics that were written and rewritten straight up until the vocals were recorded. And once it was done, everything just fitted perfectly, because the vocal arrangement were like done. All the vocal takes were like done in one take, we just did it 2 times and took the most powerful thing. We only needed to add backing vocals. So it just, all the pieces fitted together in the end. So that's why I think also the album came out as raw and uncompromising as it did, because we choose not to do a lot of overdubs, not to do a lot of licks, just make a very massive sound and make it in your face album, and I have to say, I like both kinds of black metal, Sometimes I want to be sophisticated and sometimes I want to be punched in the face. And this time I felt like punching in the face.
Yeah. And it's one or the other. There was a period of time in black metal where it was, and I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but where it was very popular for, I don't know what to call it, weakling black metal. Morgan from Marduk made the joke about it once, about somebody, person sitting by the side of a river crying. You remember all those album covers of like, the nerds sitting depressed by the side of the river. And one thing I'm very pleased about, and I don't know where you stand on where black metal is right now, but I do feel like the scene has really evolved out of that. I think it's become a lot broader. I think there's a lot more different kinds of black metal coming out and a lot of very interesting stuff happening. But I do think especially over the last maybe decade or so, the rage in a lot of black metal bands has definitely come back full scale. And I welcome that, because I've never been interested in black metal being something that, with the exception of the vocals, I could play at home and my mom would listen to it and go, oh, that's not so bad. That's a big problem. Yeah. If your parents think it's acceptable for you to listen to something, it's not good.
Yeah, probably. I kind of agree. I fucking hate music that sounds weak, especially in black metal. It just doesn't connect with me. And I've seen the scene go in different directions. I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I just look at myself and what I want to do, and I just straight up do that. But yeah, I see still there's a lot of fucking hipster pseudo black metal, a lot of safe space kids going out there that have like a crazy social media following, but not a lot of record sales, so it's like, it's a completely different ballgame, and to us, we're still doing it very old school, we live off word of mouth, records releases and gigs. So but yeah, I also like, when it comes to black metal, it can be either sophisticated, but I still want to have it like a dark and strong twist. I love bands and experiments and push the envelope, but it must have some kind of darkness, some kind of strength, some kind of pulse. Sometimes it really grabs you by the throat. If it doesn't have that and it's just sad or whatever, it's not for me. That's the nicest way I can say it.
I was about to say, you're speaking my language there for sure. But so you mentioned you live in Holland. Do you live in a city, or do you live outside in the countryside?
I live just outside of a small city, so it's Gouda, Vichys. It's also like a small city, and I live right on the edge here, so it's close to the lakes and everything. So it has everything close by, but not too much disturbance, which is cool, which I like, because the older I get, the more I tend to the countryside and the peace and quiet. Before it was more all the excesses of the big city and staying awake 5 nights in a row and everything. But I can feel that every time I go to fucking Paris and I'm there for 2 days, my anger and my frustration rises are like going, because everything is just go. You're stuck with other people all the time in the subway, do this, do that, have this high edge tempo. And at some point it's, it really gets to you, it makes me not a better person. So I really like, every time I come home, I have my peace and quiet, and I mainly live here still because it's practical. Yeah. I take the car in 5 hours, I'm in Paris. I used to have bands in Sweden. You fly up and down because the airport's really close. You go to Germany, it's 1 hour with a car, had bands over there. So it was always a very convenient way. But I would say if I would ever move, I would not stay here. It's convenient, but it's not to say that it's like really nice or like it was super exciting or something, So if I would ever move from this place, it would be to another country. But Yeah, it's kind of like it, I mean, just know that the older I get, the more I really value the peace and quiet, I can still have the chaos and I like it, but I would like to look for it. And when I'm done with it, I just go back home and retreat.
Yeah, I was about to say, I want to be able to absorb it in sample sizes only. I'm not, I can't live with that around me 24/7. I moved midway through the pandemic. I moved out into the countryside, onto a horse ranch, literally in the middle of nowhere. So there's almost nothing around me.
Yeah.
I have to drive about 25 minutes to get to the gym. And that's about as close to civilization on a daily basis as I get. I drive to the gym, I come back, and then I'm here for the rest of the day. And the nice thing about that was I didn't really experience the lockdown. I mean, certainly for the first half, I had the whole thing where you're locked in a fucking apartment, and you're only allowed to leave your house for an hour and ridiculous shit like that.
Yeah.
But the second half, especially the second lockdown that we had here in the UK, was a lot easier to deal with because I didn't. For me, as long as I could go somewhere and get some meat. I'm a big barbecuer. So as long as I can barbecue, as long as I got my music, and as long as I've got the animals around me, outside of that, I don't really give a shit. I'm not somebody who spends my time in a lot of clubs and stuff like that. So I don't need a huge amount around me to keep me happy. I just need peace and quiet. Kind of what you were saying as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the same thing. Here it was a little bit different, because I remember the first year, 2020, when the whole lockdown came, I was actually very happy. Because all of a sudden I didn't have to go into the office anymore. We could still maybe do our music and okay, good reset. So I actually took my other hobby to another level. I'm a snake breeder. I'm a big boa guy and I do monitor lizards. So I started like a snake breeding company in my house. The stuff that I have here behind me, it's like all snake cages and shit. So I just started a lot of that. I do remember that in the second year during 2021, after like 9-10 months, I was kind of like over it, and still couldn't get to France, to rehearse with the band or do the recordings. And I do remember that then you could see on the social circles, when you don't have people close to you, that things started to fall apart, which it did. But yeah, I mean, also that is over. You can see people have taken a step back, they're a bit more conscious on what they spend their time on. So in the end, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say one thing is for certain, and obviously to your point about, the Hell Militia record, there is an awful lot of bands that are putting out music right now. And one of the constant themes when I speak to people is, how much the lockdown affected the writing of the record and how the music ended up coming out. I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence that 2022, in my opinion, is one of the best years for music that I can recall in a very, very long time. And at the same time, it sort of comes as we exit the lockdowns and all this other crazy social, fallout and cultural upheaval that has been caused, or at least accelerated, I think, by the lockdowns, is playing out in the background. I think a lot of that impacts on music. And it kind of goes back to, something that David Vincent of Morbid Angel said way, way back when Covenant came out. He was interviewed by Vanessa Warwick, and he was like, these are very violent times, and people, in violent times, people like violent music. I feel like in chaotic times, people gravitate towards heavier music as well. So I definitely think there's something about the zeitgeist in which we all live right now that is influencing art. And if you are going to look for a silver lining anyway, because I mean, we can also talk about the chaos and the disaster around us, and we'll no doubt touch on that. But there is a silver lining to it, and that is the art at the moment is fucking incredible.
Yeah, it's weird. So I think we're changing, and you can see that all around you. I think what comes up now was the frustration during the pandemic. But we're going into very chaotic times. I'm not a politician, I'm not a soothsayer, but we can say, there's a war in the European mainland that we didn't have for so long. There's now gas prices rising, there's inflation, I mean, we're joking about it. At first we had a pandemic, now we had a war, we just need a recession, and we have new Hitler. It's like exactly like 100 years ago. And you can see that also coming. So I'm very curious to see in the next 4 or 5 years what will come of that, because after the frustration, people will maybe even get more angry because their livelihoods will be taken away from them. They will get scared, and people in a scared position do crazy things, So what you can see is that this, like before, black metal was also done. You see a lot of the people who made it, they were like white people from middle-class families, they always came from like a really safe bubble, and they used black metal also as a way to escape that. It was a lot of adventurers, like from the times in Norway. Most of these guys, they were like coming from really well-off families, and not really crazy shit happening in their youth. You could see that all around, like that's what's a part of the scene I actually always hated, because it was just a bunch of fucking dumbass nerd kids, just pretending to be evil, Well, there were like a very few that were actually like going the extra mile. But now that the safety bubble has burst, what will come out in the next 4 or 5 years? Because, everything that people took for granted until now on, and all their social securities, who knows what's going to be stripped away?
Yeah. Well, I think, you make a very good point around that. And again, it's something I've been thinking about recently. My thoughts on where we're at as a society have kind of evolved to a place where I feel like, generally speaking, I think human beings are weak, and they need some sort of crutch to lean on, and they certainly need something that provides them with a degree of guidance. Mm-hmm. I feel like over the last 2 decades in particular, as the role of religion in society has grown to be minimized, that created a vacuum, and the vacuum has needed to be filled by other things. And people have embraced all sorts of fucking crazy ideologies in place of religion, including, I would say climate zealotry. Again, I think we can all agree that we need to take better care of the planet. But, I think there's a distinction between the lunatics that we see, laying it down in front of in front of cars on the highway, and people that want to take a common sense approach to dealing with the Earth's, climate problems. But it's, it's climate zealotry, it's the woke agenda, it's, embracing politicians, which, again, let's be honest, politicians don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. And so, unfortunately, what I feel, and I think you just touched on it, because I think it is a very real. There's a very real danger of people embracing another Hitler or embracing another Stalin or somebody like that, because they're constantly looking for guidance, and they no longer have. Maybe, I mean, again, I was never a fan of religion, and I don't think anyone who's into black metal truly was ever a fan of it. But in a way, it's almost like we defeated the one establishment, and now it's been replaced by something else, and Mortus of Mardukus said this as well. You kind of have to weigh up, like, is what's replaced it even worse? And then at the same time, and I'm on a bit of I'm kind of giving a download of my brain here, so I'm keen to get your thoughts in a second. I mean, at the same time, I think what then further frustrates me is, black metal has always been about rebellion and about, being a fist in the face. These conformist weaklings that then infiltrate the scene, and to your point before, the hipsters and the woke types that are suddenly taking on black metal as though that's always been theirs. That also frustrates me, because this has always been a genre that, at least to me, has affirmed independent thinking, definitely a degree of openness to different ideas. But non-conformity to herd mentality, and all of those things that I've touched on before. To me, that's lemming, weakling, herd mentality. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been weird, I mean, I've also been really surprised in the last years, like what crazy ideas have come up. Whether or not it's embracing politicians. Some of the crazy conspiracies that came up during the pandemic. And I don't know whether I've been sleeping or just never ignoring it, and it was always there and it just came now bursting up, or that suddenly people went through like this collective mourning process that's, their freedoms and their safety was being taken away. Suddenly there's a pandemic, which we never had. We always felt so safe in the Western society. And then suddenly, people start doing crazy things. You can see that, so I was also surprised in the last years, to what extremes people would go with new ideas. I mean, in the end, I don't give a shit, what you believe, do this, do that, just don't come knocking at my front door. I was about to say,
stay out of my business.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing also, within the black metal scene, it was always strong, it was always non-conformative, and now you see that very dumb, mundane, earthly things, were going on. I can be irritated as well from the woke mob who tries to tell us what to do, to the people saying like everybody should get fucking vaccinated so we can have gigs again. Like, okay, so it was always a social circle for you or what, you know? And to the people who were like completely on the other side and also are not willing to talk anymore. I mean, the vaccination discussion to myself is completely boring. Do it, don't do it, you know, both have their reasons. I don't give a fuck, truly.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, you can also see that within the black metal scene, you know, things started to drift apart, you know, because yeah, it's a new world, you know, safeties have been stripped. So people, you know, some people will get fierce, some people will get angry. They all like go into different ideas, you know. Maybe it's good, you know, that we can shake some things up because everybody was always complaining that we got a little stale. Well, here we are, boys, you know, have fun.
I was about to say it's about to get shaken up big time.
Yep. And we're not done yet, you know, as I said, you know, I mean, I could pretty much see it happening that, I mean, so far we've been pretty good, but now with, you know, so first there was the pandemic. You don't know if it's done because we're so overpopulated, you know, we're like one human wet market on this planet. Of course, the next virus is going to come, you know, and so far we've actually been really lucky, you know, the first SARS never gained traction outside of Asia, you know, now with the second, you know, we got it, you know, but there's much more, you know, and we're so overpopulated that, of course, viruses are gonna, you know, run wild. So maybe a year, maybe 10 years, it might be after my time, but it's gonna come again.
Yeah.
But there's the war coming, you know, and it seems that this is going to be like a long conflict between two superpowers again, who are both very eager to not give up instead of, you know, just make efforts to end it. And as soon as inflation is going to go high and people are going to be affected directly, you know, they're going to lose their jobs, their homes, they're going to, you know, take away their food. And yeah, you will get support for another Hitler or another Stalin or anybody that's just a demagogue and promise them, you know, I'm going to take care of it. You know, you can already see it happening, you know, in the US. That hasn't been the same ever since the 2016 election, and people are at each other's throats. Which is a bit of a downside of their two-party system, where all you have to do is just make sure that you scapegoat the other party, and you don't have to have the ideas for yourself.
Yeah,
you know. So that's
it's very and very similar in the UK as well.
Yeah.
Although I would argue in the UK, at least in the States, you've got two things in your favor. Number one, you've got the federal and the state separation. So if you don't like how things are done in Texas, you can move to California. If you don't like how things are done in California, move to Florida. So you have some degree of separation, and people can kind of sort themselves naturally by where they would like to live and what I guess what values most align with them. But here in the UK, the incompetence of the government will follow you around, whether you live in Manchester, whether you live in London, whether you live in you know, where I live. And on top of that, there is at least still a couple of distinctions between the Democrats and the Republicans in America. Over here, we basically have the left who call themselves conservatives, and we've got the far left who are Labour, and that's it. Right. So you know, you've got a couple of other parties, but they mean nothing. The election is always between Labour and Conservatives, and both of them are equally inept. And I would say when it comes to Europe, I think one of the things, it's true of America also, but America and Europe, I feel, are far worse in these matters than I think a lot of other countries. That removal of or that herd thinking, and the fact that the way people blindly follow politicians and things like that, in much the same way as the Christian zealots or the you know, any religious zealots over the centuries have blindly followed the faith and never questioned it and never gone gosh, this you know, this Noah's Ark business sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me, but anyway, you know, no one questioned that stuff. But they don't. But increasingly, because they have replaced the role of religion in their lives with politics or with, you know, whatever the government can do for them, they're questioning too. Even though we have more information available to us, it feels to me like there's less questioning of what's going on with the government. And if you had asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have said, no, you know, never. You know, people are awakening. The internet's there. There's more, you know, information, you know, available to everybody. But what I've come to realize is, even though there's more information, it's almost like that's overwhelmed them, and something just switched off in their brains, and they're like, I'm just going to listen to whatever the government tells me. And nowhere was that more evident than during lockdown.
Yeah, it's true in a way. You could see that No, I mean, it's weird because we live in the age where technology and information is readily available, but it's being misused. I mean, there are malignant forces who will use this technology to bombard your head full with misinformation. It's done on all sides, from governments to whatever political or religious direction you want to think. Everybody does it. And yeah, at some point, I think people are just tired of it. They just, they want their security, and whoever is going to give it to them, that's what they will do, and they will not blindly, and they will not like question it. But you could also see with arguments online, I mean, it's just very rarely that you can have a discussion where people are, maybe disagreeing, but listening to the other, listening to facts, or say here, this and that, it's like, it's black and white, it's like, this is this, my heels are in the sand, and the line is drawn, and that's that. So this is a way where we have completely, run past our own shadow when it comes to technology. And of course, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. Social media had a lot to do with it, because it's very easily used by anyone to pump a lot of information for very little money in no time. So yeah, it's a thing, but on the other hand, yeah, we're humans, and if you call yourself smart and free thinking, I think you have a responsibility as an individual. I am responsible for, when I go online, what I feed my head with.
Yeah, agree.
I have a responsibility that if I would talk with you or any other person, and we disagree slightly, to listen to facts, to listen to reason, and agree to
I immediately,
disagree.
as soon as we disagree, conversation's over. I'm never talking to him again. No, I'm joking, but again, you're absolutely correct in the role of social media. I think the problem is it turned not just politics, but any cultural discussion into a team sport. It's like, again, let's go back 1,000 years. A conversation between a Christian and a Buddhist.
Yeah,
both of them believe you shouldn't steal from somebody, but try and get two, absolute zealots, inquisitor level religious nutcases to talk to each other and find some sort of middle ground. It just wouldn't have happened. And it's because they operate without any degree of principle. I had a conversation with somebody who listens to the podcast offline a little while back, and we were talking about, kind of taking the center. And I said to him, it's not a case of taking the center. It's a case of standing by your principles because you're so convinced by your principles, and you stick so rigidly to principle that you're more than willing to piss off people on either side of the fence. Because I don't need to be in a team. I don't need to be on any side of the fence that I don't feel comfortable being in. I just have my principles, and that's that. Some things I believe, some things I believe in personally, I'm more conservative on. Some things I believe in, I'm much more liberal on. But they're based on researched principles and ideas. They're not based on something that some idiot on TikTok fed me. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a way, it's also, I mean, I'm the same, I'm pretty much, conservative in certain policies and much more liberal on others, I mean, I did not come from a rich household. So I always carry, a lot of that's, idealist stuff with me, even if I got older. But yeah, in the end, it's also about, agreeing to disagreeing as long as nobody is a threat. I mean, I can perfectly disagree with my neighbor if they have a different opinion on it and we leave each other be. Then I would be like, for example, a religious zealot that would take away my freedoms the second he has the chance for it. That's a bit, I would react a bit different for that. I mean, are these people going to take away my liberties? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then fuck it, do what you want. But you can see that is that, the free thinking individual, it is almost dead. A lot of people like to say that they are, but even in the most fringe cultures, whether it is the survival movement, black metal, the political fringes left and right, everybody wants an identity, it's like, this is me, that they have to label it, which is already, a bit of a wrong starting point. But yeah. Anyway, who am I?
No, I agree with you. And again, you touch on an interesting point there. You always laugh when you go to a metal show and you look at the audience and you go, you guys are all individuals that all dress exactly the same. Yeah. So it's like, and I can't talk because I'm most of my life I spend in a black t-shirt of some sort with the band on the front. But it is one thing to call yourself an individual. It's another thing to kind of abide by those principles and abide by the standards, and it's hard. Sometimes you have to risk feeling very alone. And when the unrest comes, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, you're covered because you've got your army of snakes that you're busy raising at your home. So nothing is going to happen with you. Dude, I'll tell you a story, actually. So
Okay.
You may have picked up from my voice. I'm originally from South Africa. And as you know, you may well know we've got a slight problem with crime.
Yep.
Many years ago, there was a guy who went to the municipality and he asked them to basically knock up an official municipal sign for him that said "Warning: Live snakes on property," and he put it at on the front of his gate.
Yeah.
And in that entire road, every single home in that road was burgled multiple times over the course of a 4-year period. Over 4 years, his home was untouched. He had almost no security.
Yeah.
He had no alarm. He just had a basic gate, but on the gate it said "Warning: Live snakes on property." And that story has stuck by me my whole life. I thought to myself, it's such a brilliant idea because
it is.
The guy who's walking past the house thinking, which one am I going to rob? If he sees live snakes on property at the one, and on the other, all he sees is a little, security camera or something like that. If I were him, I know what I'm going to, I know which way the dice is going to roll for me.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a funny thing that you say that, because my house also have never been burglared, but I live here for a long time now, and most of my neighbors all had, I do not have any signs, but I kind of think it's somebody who knew the neighborhood. So, yeah. It's you either get a guard dog or you get like 100 snakes. It all works.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing that for, and what first got you interested in it?
Well, way back actually. I was a little kid. I was like full on into reptiles, snakes, of course, dinosaurs. And it was like a real passion. So that was the other thing that was always like really big. If I was never like beginning to become like a touring musician, I probably would have been like a vet, like a reptile vet or something today. So I was always into that. So I got my first snake when I was 16, still living at home with my parents, and had that one like for like 10 years. And so over that, it kind of like grew. And at some point I got like really into it, because that was like, I knew a lot of people were like doing the professional breeding. I was doing a lot of vet. So I became a professional snake breeder at that point. And I even had my own reptile shop for like 5.5 years in Holland, where I was like only selling like lizards and snakes and tortoises and tarantulas, all that stuff, like specialized one. Did that for 5.5 years. Actually had to give that up because it became a little bit too much. I had like so many snakes at home. So I was like, from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night, just like doing that. It was like, conveyor belt work at some point. So it's kind of like got worn out. So I sold the shop. Luckily, just in time, because that was like back then, like 2006, 7, 8, right before the financial crisis started. So I got out, got my own investment back and did a while, nothing. But I was also doing some other stuff, for other people. So after a few years of like doing more touring, being a lot away from home, doing more music, was actually management from Alice Cooper who called like, hey, do you have boas? Because, we need sometimes for the European tours. I'm like, interesting. So I got some again. And then I was like, fuck, I missed this, So I kind of like was building it back up. So I always had like a few and it was a thing. And, but yeah, during the pandemic, I was like, okay, suddenly I was at home. I have like a fairly large apartment. I was like, okay, this might take a while. What am I going to do? So I just like started investing like crazy because there were a lot of people who were normally selling on expos and fairs that suddenly were not there. So if you were like a bit handy with your contacts, you can get like a lot of good snakes for like good deals, with a lot of genes. So I was just building it up. And now, I'm kind of like breeding. So, and also the monitor lizards, they're like, they're South African, by the way. They're like monitor lizards, the white-throated ones.
Yeah.
So they're like, the male is like 160, 170 or something, and the female is like 150. So, yeah, trying to breed those, but didn't have any successful eggs yet, a lot of pairings, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe one day.
I have for all of my life been fucking petrified of snakes. I mean, petrified. I had an experience with one when I was very young, and I think I set up unrecorded land speed record with the speed that I ran back into a house after I saw one. But a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, I was at the Crocodile and Snake Park in Johannesburg, and the guy let me drape a boa over my shoulders.
Mhm.
And I mean, she was very calm. She was a female. One thing that she did, which gave me, because when I say I'm afraid, I was absolutely petrified, but there was
Sure.
also a degree of fascination with it because of that. Kind of the same thing with crocodiles, which is a different conversation. But anyway, so I draped her over my shoulder. At one point, she just very kind of lightly put her tail around the bottom of my leg just to almost sort of keep herself steady. And she sort of you could feel she was applying a bit of pressure, just as I said, just to maneuver herself. I said to the guy at the time, Jesus Christ, like I've done jiu-jitsu, I've done Muay Thai and MMA. I have felt what it feels like to be handled by strong human beings. I have never felt this before. This thing is fucking ridiculously strong. And he said to me at the time, he said, if she wrapped herself around you, we would literally need to bring a chainsaw in here to get her off. There is nothing else that's going to do it. But anyway, so that's just my personal experience. Okay, sure. I know you have plenty more, but so what kind of snakes do you breed, and I guess what is so fascinating about them for you?
I think the entire behavior. So right now I'm specialized on boa constrictor, but back in the day I used to have everything like boas, the big pythons that you probably had around your neck. There was a lot of like smaller stuff. I also did a lot of venomous, they had some Egyptian cobras, puff adders, pit vipers, the horns, rattlesnakes, and everything, so just fascinated. But yeah, I love almost all animals, but especially the reptiles, because it's so fascinating that once you understand them, there's a lot more going on in that brain that we give them credit for. And also the way they behave and the way that they work in modes, it's a lot like, the reptilian brain inside a human, the fight or flight response and everything. And when you start to notice, what a snake thinks and how they act, and what they do with their tongue, if they have a body language where they are either scared or, in ambush, thinking you're food, or where you actually want them, picking up and they know that, okay, there's no danger here, and they're going to thinking mode and they're like really curious, so it's really amazing working with them. And especially also with the monitor lizards, that's like another level, because these are also highly intelligent to the point that if you have them as pets, you also have to mentally stimulate them, by, hiding food everywhere, wear them out a little bit, like the same you would do with like, horses, dogs, cats, etc. So there's a lot to it, and of course, by now it's not a mystery factor anymore because I've been doing this for like over 30 years, but of course, everybody who's as a child, like attracted to reptiles, there's this big fucking aura of mystery around them that you're just like, what the fuck is this? It's like an ultimate predator that is here since the Ice Age, and we don't know. Now we know a lot more, but back then when it started, nobody knows, what goes on in the mind of a snake, that if they have like 4 modes, like either sleeping, feeding mode, fear mode, or thinking mode, how you can recognize it, how you can work with it, how you can train them, what kind of intelligence is in there. So I think that's also why I'm still doing it, because one, I'm still breeding, and especially with the morphs, you get all these amazing colors that you can combine. So I'm kind of like, being a little snake Frankenstein in here. And yeah, but also you're still learning. We're still learning about all these reptiles, and even, with venomous, they're a bit more intelligent, so also a bit more complex, how they work, so that will go on for a few more decades before we really, figured everything out.
Well, what do you think is the biggest thing that the average person who has no experience with snakes, what do you think is the biggest thing they misunderstand about snakes, generally speaking?
Yeah, they misread the snakes, because in the end, it is just a very, creature that's in the wild just wants to be left alone, They're opportunists, so they will lie, in a burrow, in a tree, and if there comes a predator, they will hide, or they will lie still and rely on the camouflage, they just don't want to be bothered. But a lot of species that we do here in captivity that are very successful, other ones that calm down, they get tamed quite a bit. I'm not going to say that they recognize their owner, but they will recognize interaction with humans. They can get very used to that. And I think that is what people are most misunderstood about. They think they're primitive. They think they're aggressive. It's not actually.
Mm. As I said, I mean, I come from a place of fear, but also fascination. Another animal that I'm particularly fascinated with are crocodiles, because you talk about the behavior of it. I saw I think it was a Steve Irwin video once where he was moving a load of crocodiles from one series of enclosures to another, and when he moved a female into a different enclosure. Actually, sorry, he moved a male into a different enclosure, and when he moved the female that was his mate, the second he came to her, she made this bizarre sound, and this male literally stormed from his enclosure to the gate of the spot that he was in and tried to destroy it. I mean, he was like whipping with his tail, going absolutely crazy. So she had sent out clearly some degree of distress signal to him, and it's like he heard it, and he was like, all right, some motherfuckers are going to die. Yeah. Anyway, when they finally got her into the enclosure with him, he had retreated to his pond. She kind of slipped into the pond, and he then swam over to her and rested his head on top of her, which they said is him trying to calm her down. Then 20 minutes later, they were making love. But the thing is, what was so incredible about it is up until that point, and I was in my 20s when I saw this, I'd never considered that a crocodile would have that deep or that sophisticated a means of communicating amongst themselves as I witnessed there. And it kind of sounds to me, so I'm fascinated when you're talking about the communication side of snakes, because I love animals too, and that's always been the one thing that I found most fascinating about them is the way they communicate and the way they express themselves. Each animal is so distinct and so unique, but one of the biggest, I think, things that keep surprising you is just how sophisticated the communication is, and how much depth there is to it. These are not animals that are, communicating with each other with, hand symbols and, the odd grunt here and there.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing. Crocodiles also, I do not have crocodiles. I've had a caiman once, at some point, but I do know people that work with them, and it's fascinating, because they can be trained. You need a lot of work with them and a lot of patience, but especially with the dwarf caimans, I have people, who make them almost like puppy dogs. You can pick them up, and it's basically, you need to train them a lot because they're predators and so are we. And you're basically training another predator that, we can mess with them, so that is taking a lot, but you can like desensitize them for touch, that they are used to getting touched and that they're used to getting handled. And also, they're very complex creatures, because if you have multiple crocs in a pond, they have a hierarchy. If you would introduce another croc, male or female, into that, all hell is going to break you loose because they have to like establish group hierarchy again, and of course, they will couple up. If they have eggs in a nest, they will vehemently defend that nest. And also when the young are born, the mother is there and, is taking care of them a long time before they swim out. So there's a lot more to that animal than we see.
Well, that's also one of the most beautiful things about nature to me is the degree by which mothers look after their young. Like they've always said, if you get between a hippo and her baby, it's game over. Like there's no coming back from that. I've actually held a baby crocodile as well. When I was at the crocodile park, I held one. And it was interesting. This one was only about, I think, 9 or 10 weeks old. And he was okay with me holding him for about, I'd say, a minute, and then he was like, "Okay, fuck this now." And he tried to nip at my hand and stuff. I mean, it wouldn't have hurt, but you could feel even then, like, Christ Almighty, these things are fucking strong.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the big dream here at the horse ranch where I live, I keep teasing my girlfriend about it, is I want to dig a moat around it and have crocodiles swimming there. If I ever have intruders, I'll have these big intercoms, and I just go on the intercom like, "Wait right there," and then let them out.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's funny, I sometimes watch these YouTube clips of these guys who are like living down in Florida, and so they have all the reptile cages outside. They have like big ponds with crocodiles, and they have like Asian water monitors and all that stuff. So they can actually do that. Unfortunately for me, in Holland it's too cold. And my girlfriend, she's from the Pacific Northwest in the US, so it's also way too cold over there. So it's.
I was about to say, how does she feel about the snakes?
Oh, she's okay. She's not scared and all that stuff. She's interesting.
Yeah.
So she's not like as big into it as it, but that's logical because I'm like fanatical about it. So, but she's good.
I was just about to say, if you're out on a first date, that would be an interesting one to broach. Hey, listen, if this goes very well and you come back to mine, I hope you're not afraid of snakes.
Yeah, it was usually also the girl's house, it's that's the thing, so that's one big disclaimer I always had, like in Holland it was always very hard to date, because a lot of even the metal women, like they're like a little bit middle of the road over here, like nothing too extreme. And then come I, like, hey, yeah, I'm in a black metal band and I have like 100 snakes at home, and at first they don't believe you, and then they're like, they look at you like you're the male version of the crazy cat lady. I just think like, okay, let's get the fuck away from the psycho.
So let's talk again just about Hollow Void for a bit. Tell me a bit about the recording of the record. I know obviously it was a bit stop-start and there was a lot of things going on, but you also mentioned that there had been a lot of factors in delaying it. So I mean, outside of COVID, what took so long for you guys to to create and put out a new record?
Yeah, so it was weird. So I actually have to go back quite a bit, right? So Jacob's Ladder was released in 2012, and I was like joining just then, and so we had a bit of a few changes after. So the bass player left, and later left the earth for good. So our VJ back then, he took on the bass duties. I did the vocals. So we started.
Apologies for the interruption. What, if you don't mind me asking, what happened to him?
Oh, she decided to leave. She killed herself. So okay. That's that was also after, but it had an impact, and so I did the vocals, and then it was also around 2014 that like our other guitar player and the main composer, he just completely vanished. He disappeared on the Dominican Republic. So that's
Jesus.
Interesting place to disappear.
I was about to say, and is still at large in the Dominican Republic?
Yeah, it's he's not back in France. Let's keep it at that. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So I'm about to say that you've got two movies there that you could produce out of some of this crazy shit.
We're about to break Mayhem's record. It's
yeah.
That's but all kidding aside. So of course, there was another guitar player, but afterwards, it was also we kept playing live. So we did like another European tour with that lineup. We did some festivals, but it was also we're trying to like refine ourselves, and also do it in such a way that it does honor to the legacy of Hell Militia, and that it's at least as good, if not better, So of course it takes time. You have to find each other a little bit. So we already started writing. Took our time also, because like, at some point, if it's already a few years since your last album, a year extra is not gonna go back. And then at the same time, I was also singing in other bands. So most of us, it's not like anyone said on their ass, it was a bit like that. So we're just like trying to find it. At some point, the good compositions and the good riffs, became more fluent that we were writing them. So we were like on the good path. And then every time it was like a little bit better. So yeah, I think like 2018, 2019, we were like finally shaping everything, at least with the raw compositions. So yeah, then of course we're rehearsing, the best we can for an international band. You go into the studio, COVID hits, so that like was another delay. But yeah, as I said, fast forward, autumn 2020, finally drums recorded, guitars and bass over the winter in Paris. Had some problems with me being able to travel and some personal things, so vocals recorded in July. Then mix was probably done September or something, early October. So yeah, you give the master to the label. They do the press announcement. Then there's like a 6-month waiting period at the pressing plant, because vinyls, of course, are the PVC for it is almost impossible to get, the raw material shortage.
Yeah.
And we were still lucky because originally it was supposed to come then out in April. We could move it up a month, so it was already done in March. So time went by really fast. I mean, it's like I know 10 years is a long time, but it didn't feel like that at all.
And from your perspective, what's the response to the record been like?
It's good. It's weird, I always hate to judge my own releases because I hate them. You have the type of musician that that really loves what they're doing and really loves, talking and looking at themselves. And you have the type that, sees their little creations as their bastard children. And I'm definitely one of the last. So it's always weird to me, right? But I think the reaction have been good. A lot of people were like really happy that it was like a lot more raw and aggressive, than Jacob's Ladder. And it was really well received. I have no idea about sales numbers, by the way. But yeah, just judging by the overall reaction, there was always some people who say, I liked, the other one better because Jacob's Ladder was a bit more adventurous or this or that, so you cannot please everybody. But I think overall it was like, really good. I was very positively surprised.
Well, I think it's as far as I can tell, I believe it's your highest reviewed record or your best reviewed record, certainly on Metal Archives. You currently sit on 86%. I mean, again, like I said, from my perspective, like I said earlier, I like the raw stuff. So for me, it was just exactly the way it should be done. And I know, you come from the raw school of black metal anyway, because you've been involved in bands like Funeral Winds. You were with Funeral Winds for quite a while, were you not?
Yep. Yeah. I think I left there in 2007 or something.
And Funeral Winds has now turned into a one-man project.
Yeah, exactly. So so later on we went our own way, and later on I know that Funeral Winds did reform, like after I left, like 2 years later or something, with another lineup. It was mostly also with the guys from the other Dutch band Infinity, where I also had some ties to, because in such a small country and being so close to each other in the West, of course everybody knows and kind of works with each other. And in the last few years, it turned more into like this whole one-man show, because I know that Hellkreis 2 is living in Prague now in Czech Republic, and the rest of the guys are still in Holland. So I do believe that whenever there are live gigs, he flies in, they rehearse, and they do the stuff. And in the meantime, all the other guys, they're focusing on Infinity and their own projects.
Yeah, I was about to say, is he just very antisocial and he doesn't like working with other people? Or is it...
I don't know. I mean, if you look at his social media, he's a pretty social dude. So that's but I think he likes the control. He was always like that. He's a perfectionist. So when I was already in the band, he started learning, to do producing and mixing. Went to school for that, so that he could like have a thing for that. He's one of these people that likes to control the process. From beginning to end. He's one of those, I mean, that's good, I mean, he makes good records, so good for him, I'm always a bit of the other side, because I'm always afraid with my, kind of limited musical skills, that if I would do everything myself, I would start to repeat myself. And I like to be challenged, so always working with new people is good, fresh blood is good, and I know that if I have somebody kicking my ass and I'm kicking the other person's ass, that we can really get the best out of each other, It's, neither of the things is wrong, this just works better for me. But there was also the reason why, I mean, I was like, for a certain period of time, doing certain bands, the Bethlehem thing was great, while it lasted, even though with such a band, you always know that, it's going to end at some point, because it's always been a band with a lot of turmoil. The same with some other bands. So it's but that is the thing, I mean, coming from the Dutch scene, Funeral Winds was the most remarkable, but there was also, one of these bands that were always keeping it raw, even in spite of the symphonic black metal trend, like in the late 90s. We're up in the forefront where everything went extreme again in the early 2000s, like Funeral Winds was right there, and even though we did not have the same impact as, like that gold, that holy trinity of like Wateins, Casus Luciferi, and that's where Omega, Si Monumentum, and Funeral Mist Salvation, which all came out around the same time. We were still always, having that mindset, in. And I think this also never left me, because, I mean, I've grown older, I'm not the same person 30 years ago as when I started playing music, but I still have like this raw and radical side when it comes to black metal, and I refuse to compromise on any of that. Aside from that, you always have to compromise a little. Also in the snake business, at my work, you make a career, some people start families. I haven't, but some people do, but at least that part, it has to, always stay, as extreme as you can do it.
Yeah, you need something you can hold on to that I think in some ways, I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it, but it connects you to your youth, or it connects you to kind of that part of yourself that, as you've said, you don't have to compromise on. So yeah, I'm with you there. I like the last Funeral Winds record very much. Grote Lamenten, I think it's called. I really liked it. And I like the previous stuff too, but I thought that last record was absolutely sensational.
Yeah.
Are you still involved with I think it's Veldbrand is your other project?
So I'm still involved with the guys. We're actually writing now, but it's going to be something completely new. Veldbrand, I think, so we did 3 albums, and it was always a bit more like not industrial, but a bit leaning towards it, with a bit of this groovy, cold, satirical Thorns, cold kind of riffing. And but yeah, at some point, there was also, I said what I wanted to say over there, and at some point the things just fell apart. I have been already starting to write with the other guy. And we got some delays because people were hopping on and dropping off, and finding a drummer is that lives close and can do the 200 BPM plus beat, 40 minutes in a row is a challenge here in Holland.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a new thing coming. It's probably a bit more, Funeral Mist catharsis with a lot of chaos things. I want to add maybe 2 or 3 singers over each other that just gives you a non-stop assault. But it's very much still cooking, but it will be a new band with a new name and new everything. And now that the Hell Militia thing is out, want to focus on that. So maybe have a release, hopefully in the first half of next year.
Awesome. And have you started shopping around for labels that could put that out, or is it still in the conceptual stages right now?
It is in the conceptual stages. So at some point, I kind of through hell or high waters, want to start recording this year. Most likely first finance everything myself, and then just see, if a label picks it up, we'll see. I know that the material is very strong, and I do not say that lightly because, again, I'm the musician that hates his own stuff. So that's also the reason why the whole new Nidra project took so long, because, I will dump songs, I will dump riffs and everything that does not stand the test of time. And over the years, also, the quality of these compositions just went up and up. So now we're finally at the level where I can say, oh yeah, when I release this, that will make an impact. And I'm happy, because otherwise, you would come in and I think we made that same mistake with Veldbrand. We shot ourselves in the foot by starting to release too early.
Yeah.
And I still think they're okay albums, but it's okay, but once you have that first impression, also that image, it's very hard to convince people that your second album or your third album is much better. Yeah. So I'm way more patient these days and take my time and just do it when it's absolutely done right. And I don't care if it takes 2 years or 10, just got to be that. But yeah, we're at this point where I'm like, okay, the basic, the raw compositions are done, need to find the right musicians around it and just go.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as Hell Militia is concerned, have you guys got any plans to be playing live at any point or for an extended period of time in the not too distant future? Or what are the immediate plans for that band?
Yeah, well, we are doing the live, it's quite hard this year still to get a tour, because when the album came out, we were still halfway in COVID measures, and France was still locked up in March and all this stuff, so we did a CD presentation only late May, if I'm correct, or early June. And we did a festival in Switzerland recently, so we have some gigs planned in Germany next month. There's a French festival, Winter Rising, and there is Mes de Mort in Canada. We're confirmed for that in November. So we're kind of just doing the festival and exclusive gigs now. And but yeah, if we get a good opportunity to do a good underground tour again, I'm all up for it, because Hell Militia has always been a live band. All the songs are designed to play live, and that was always the strength for the band. Even before I was in the band, I was very much a fan of the band. Especially how the energy they had live, and it's still there. It's very raw in your face. So yeah, to me, the more the better, as long as it's right, as long as it's the right thing. So we're looking into some festivals like for early next year, so there is interest, but you can see that it's a bit harder than before COVID to really get like a 2-week tour on the way or to do some other things, because you can see a bunch of good promoters are no longer there anymore, or some clubs have closed, or the audience just doesn't come back in certain countries. So I think we have to find ourselves again there.
All right, my brother. Well, I hugely appreciate your time. I know you don't do a huge amount of interviews, so I massively appreciate that you were willing to talk to me for over an hour. I had an absolute blast, and like I said, once again, loved Hollow Void, and very much looking forward to this next project that you spoke about. Like my gears sort of turning as you sort of describing it there. It's like that sounds exactly like my kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, dude. Yeah, thank you for this. It was an interesting chat, so appreciate that.
Great stuff. Take care of yourself.
All right, you too, man.
Bye-bye. That was the highest fall by Hell Militia off their excellent record, Hollow Void. It is available right now on Season of Mist Records, and I want to say a big thank you both to Katie Irizarry for setting up the interview and also for Rogier for making the time to talk to me. Great dude, I had an absolute blast, and as always, the link to their Bandcamp will be in the description to the podcast. So click on that, check out their music, and if you like what if you liked what you heard, which frankly you should, and you buy yourself something, then let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. On now to some new music. Back on Into the Necrosphere, episode 102, I was absolutely blown away by a black metal project out of the UK called Aldorfrea. I featured their demo In Deepest Isolation as my demo of the week. 5 tracks of black metal, which I thought was just basically too good to be ignored by record labels. Much as I've had a couple of other bands on here as well, where I kind of scratch my head as to how nobody has picked them up yet. I mean, Aldorfrea, I definitely felt that way about. And considering the fact that at the time that I featured them, I think according to Metal Archive, they were only a couple of months old. One thing that I was absolutely blown away by was just how mature and how well-formed and how well-realized their music sounds. Now, good news is Matriarch Records, a new UK female-owned record label that specializes in extreme metal and post-punk and goth, has had their eyes screwed on properly, or their ears screwed on properly in this case. They have signed Aldorfrea, and Aldorfrea now present us with their debut record, Thy Kingdom Cold. Just a side note on Matriarch Records real quick. They also signed another Into the Necrosphere Demo of the Week alumnus, Suffering, another absolutely top-notch band. And so I would like to offer my services to them free of charge. I've spoken many, many times on this podcast of bands that I think deserve recognition, which they are frankly not getting. And I've said many times the music industry is sleeping on their hands as far as a couple of these groups are concerned. But to the Matriarch Records folk, if you want to reach out, I will provide you with a list of absolutely sensational bands that you can sign to your label and become one of the greatest powerhouses in extreme music. And I will charge you absolutely nothing for it. A couple that I'll throw out straight away. Droogoth out of Australia. Absolutely fantastic. Cult Burial, based right here in the UK. The mind boggles at how these guys aren't signed yet. Thundering Hooves. They put out their debut record, Vestiges, last year. It is absolutely sensational. Born Ultra, I've spoken about them on the podcast many times. I'm actually getting to a point where I'm starting to have more and more people ask me to get them on the podcast, so I think I do need to make that happen. And then, of course, my brother Evan Hopper and Quell, if nothing else convinces you, I featured as a guest vocalist on his last record. But a phenomenal album and an absolutely great dude. And I think that once I know he's tinkering with plans to get a touring outfit together. I think if he takes that music on the road, I would be very surprised if the bigger labels don't come calling. So Matriarch Records, there you go. I've given you some freebies. Now feel free to reach out if you want. Now that you've had a taste, feel free to reach out if you want more. But anyway, I'd had a taste of Aldorfrea. I thought In Deepest Isolation was excellent. Thy Kingdom Cold is a logical continuation of that record. I did play the first single they released off of that record, a song called The Hag, probably about 2 months ago. I like that song, but I will say the rest of the record I feel is a little bit more ambitious than that track. That track to me was a very solid slab of UK black metal that riffed off of bands like Immortal and Inquisition, all the way down to Queller, the vocalist and bassist voice, which again will remind you at times of Dagon, at times it reminds you of Abath in his prime. But what I love about Aldorfrea and what they do a lot on this record is, as much as they riff off of very familiar bands and as much as they make absolutely no secrets of their myriad influences, what they do is toss in little twists in the tale every so often. Sometimes it's a female vocal, sometimes it's a keyboard line, but there's always seems to be something just around the corner that you don't quite expect, and that keeps you wanting to listen to the songs. Now, as with every debut record, there are some songs that are better than others. I think the first track, which I'm going to attempt to pronounce, but I know I'm going to butcher this, Norbern Broga, is phenomenal. Absolutely kicks off the record in the most grandiose, kind of announcing their arrival way that you can imagine. Fantastic stuff. The Endless Forest Dark, I think, is a song that builds up to these kind of big moments, again, which are scattered across the record, but on this song, I think it stands out, phenomenally well too. Candida Novis, which is track 5, is almost like the better brother of the Endless Forest Dark. And then Immersed in Suffocating Snow, to me, is one of the record's centerpieces. I mean, this one is truly immortal worship at its most venerable, I think is the right word. But the Aldorfrea guys pull it off exceptionally well. So again, overall, I am firstly absolutely delighted that they've been signed. I would not assume to think that I had a hand in that happening, but it kind of in a way has inspired me to get my act together again and probably do a bit more of the demo of the week thing, which I know I've been neglecting recently. But like I've said, my one of the big ambitions that I had with this podcast is to give bands an opportunity to get exposed, and I would definitely say this: if you've not yet checked out Aldorfrea, you for sure need to do yourself a favor and do so, because Thy Kingdom Cold is great. It's not perfect, but I think it's a very solid 8.5 out of 10 record, and I am super excited about what the future holds for these guys, because I think if they carry on at the trajectory that they are going to be absolutely sensational. And I would also say this: Matriarch Records, welcome to the game, and good luck to you guys. You are making the right moves. And I'm very much looking forward to whoever you end up putting out in the hopefully not too distant future. So on that note, folks, I'm going to step back and let you listen to some music. Immersed in Suffocating Snow is the song that I mentioned a second ago. It is also the song that you're about to hear right now. Immersed in Suffocating Snow by Aldorfrea, off the record Thy Kingdom Cold, available right now on Matriarch Records. Link in the description to the podcast. If you head over there and you buy yourself some merchandise or some music, make sure that the gang at Aldorfrea know who sent you. Queller of Aldorfrea will be on the podcast at some point over the course of the next couple of weeks. That interview is already on the books. So looking forward to talking to him, and very best of luck to the Matriarch Records folk. Once again, as I said, I'm excited to see a new label hit the scene. It seems to me like they're making some good moves. And to borrow a phrase from Jamie Jester, high tide raises all ships. Now, it is time for the weak, the cowardly, and the spineless to run for cover, because who knows what I will uncover and what spicy topics will come up for discussion as I head over to Metal Storm for my weekly news rant. First headline on Metal News reads, Dirty Shirt, hot for summer video online. That name is absolutely terrible and will make me not listen to the song. Not dissimilar to the next headline, Miss May I unveil new single. I hate metalcore, and the name Miss May I think should see you get a wedgie every single day of your entire life for the rest of your life. However, next up, we've got one of the bands that I'll talk about the band in a second, but Dying Fetus has a new single, new video out. It says here, US Tech Death Masters, Dying Fetus premiering an official music video for their brand new music piece, the single called Compulsion for Cruelty via Relapse Records. Doesn't say anything about when a new record might be released, but it is probably way overdue. If memory serves me correctly, I think Wrong One to Fuck With came out in 2017 or 2018. So it's been a hot minute. Like I said, I'm going to talk about what I think of this band in just a second, but let's listen to the first minute or so of Compulsion for Cruelty. So, I mean, the general expectation anytime the Dying Fetus put out new music is that it is going to be excellent. This is no exception. This is brilliant. What I was going to say about Dying Fetus is I cannot think of another band in any subgenre of the metal scene or any other music for that matter who have set the bar for that particular style so high that basically no band can come close. I mean, it just is, as far as tech death is concerned, there is not a single band like Dying Fetus. You can throw as many Arc Spires and I don't know who else, Brain Draw. I mean, I'm too out of touch with that scene, in part because I feel like Dying Fetus have just done everything possible that you can do in that scene, and then they've kind of taken it that one step further. So, you know, what you hear in that song is all the technical stuff that you would hear on a Origin record, but instead of, you know, Origin losing its guts a little bit, as many of particularly their more recent songs do, this one is just, yeah, there's just balls there. It's aggressive, it's violent. I mean, John Gallagher sounds like John Gallagher. I by the way, agree with my friend Razor Eater Metal on Instagram that he does look a bit weird with the long hair. I can't get used to him with that, but he sounds like a fucking banshee. And then, you know, you've got that second vocal coming in that sounds equally hard. I mean, this band is just on a different level. There's just nothing. There's no other way to describe it when it comes to technical death metal, in my opinion. And many people probably disagree with me on this. It's not just about the technicality, it's about the way they write songs and how aggressive and how focused they're able to make the music without compromising on that technicality. I just don't think there's a band that can touch them. They are just fucking phenomenal. I love Wrong One to Fuck With. I would say if I did a top 10 death metal records of all time, I'd be hard pressed not to include that album. But then I've also loved every single thing they've done. I remember hearing Purification Through Violence for the first time and thinking to myself, I had literally heard the most aggressive and violent thing I was ever going to have heard in my entire life. And I frankly, any time I listen to that record, I still think that. I would love more than anything to have John Gallagher on the podcast, because I would like to pick through the mind of a man that can write music that sounds literally like testosterone turned into notes. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. But let's get back to Compulsion for Cruelty. If you're watching this on YouTube, you no doubt caught me looking at my phone. I needed to remind myself of the name of the second vocal that I just referenced earlier, Sean Beasley. I wanted to do that partly because I also wanted to say, as much as he may have been, I wouldn't actually, I take that back. I was about to say the halcyon days of Dying Fetus, but their halcyon days are now, are 2022. It's basically their halcyon days have been from the day they started through to 2022. But I was going to say, I think Sean Beasley, I think his vocals are a better match for John Gallagher than Jason Netherton's was. Jason Netherton, of course, now in Misery Index. You know, Misery Index is his game. I thought he was decent in Dying Fetus, but Sean Beasley tops him any day of the week, twice on Sunday. In my opinion. But yeah, just a fucking great band, and I hope that there is going to be a new record released very, very soon. Okay, let's move on. We scoffed at a new Demon Hunter track not long ago, so we're not going to attempt to do so again. Megadeth unveil new music video. Not going to listen to this, but what I will say is I have actually heard the whole album back to back now 2-3 times. I listened to it on Friday when it came out. I'm always naturally curious whenever one of the big four release anything new, and I must say I was pleasantly surprised. I think it's a reasonable record. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably the best thing I've heard Megadeth do maybe since Countdown to Extinction. I would even go as far as to say I might even like it a little bit more than Countdown to Extinction on first couple of listens. I think that Dave's voice sounds really good. I think they've done a great job, and kudos to whoever provided this level of direction, whether it was him or whether it was anybody else. I think they did a great job of letting the music work with his voice, because clearly following his bout with cancer, he was going to need to make some compromises some way, and I think he's done that very, very well. I think everyone else, as far as their performances are concerned, I think they sound great. There are more good songs on this record than there are poor songs. Now, that being said, Dave frequently seeks to remind us that he is still Dave. There are two Daves, in my view. There is Diamond Dave, the Dave that wrote Holy Wars, the Dave that was, most likely seen as a young buck by Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield and hired for Metallica. And then there's Dickhead Dave, the guy who talks flagrantly about, all of his many martial arts accomplishments. The dude who, as he does on this record, uses what I can only describe as amateur theatrics that he records and then uses as a sample on a record or on a song. Dickhead Dave, who writes lyrics that sound like they were, first written or they were stolen from a demo from the 1980s. He turns up on this one quite a few times too. It's kind of like his appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. I actually just finished listening to that not long before I started recording this episode. When he lets the guard down and he's his authentic self and he's a nice guy and he's talking about stuff he knows about, he's awesome. However, on that episode, again, 45 minutes worth of talking about his sensei and all of his many trainings and how he never looked for trouble. And, these humble brag intimations about how much of a fucking badass he is. And then there were a couple of moments as well where, when he's talking about black magic, for example, to Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was kind of giving him the skeptical eyes. He almost became a little passive aggressive about the whole thing. At least that was my interpretation of it. But like I said, it is what it is with Megadeth, and it is what it is with Dave. You accept one with the other. Diamond Dave features more frequently on The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead than does Dickhead Dave. And that's not a bad thing. So if you're a Megadeth fan, I suspect you're going to love this record. If it managed to convince a guy who frequently pokes fun at the band, then it's not bad. Thou Art Lord have posted a new lyric video online. For those that don't know, Thou Art Lord also feature the musical stylings of Sakis Tolis, Rotten Christ frontman, perhaps as importantly, former Into the Necrosphere guest. It says here, Greek black metalers Thou Art Lord have announced that after 9 years of absence, they are back with the release of their new EP, Demonorium, which is available on September the 21st. It'll be limited to 666 red vinyl copies and available exclusively via the Circle Music Order at this location. They give the location, yeah. The lyric video for Hades can be streamed below. Let us listen to what Hades sounds like. The album cover basically looks like a rough sketch for Triarchy of the Lost Lovers that was not used. But let's hear what the music sounds like. I love it. I think it sounds great. I think it sounds like Rotting Christ. And this is kind of the question I had about the Sakis solo record as well. It's like, why not just release that as Rotting Christ? You write most of the music for Rotting Christ anyway. He clearly wrote this song. I mean, I don't even need to look at the credits for it to know that it is his work. And everything he writes is fucking great. So I don't know why he wouldn't just put it out as Rotting Christ. But either way, who gives a shit? He could put it out as Thou Art Lord. He could put it out as, frankly, he could put it out as Miss May I, and it would still sound fucking cool. Yeah, top-notch stuff. And what a mammoth response I had to that Sakis Tolis episode. In part because I think people were so surprised at how humble and how down-to-earth the guy is. He has been in the game for a long, long while. I think he gets a degree of adulation that, few others experience. And rightly so. He's just a fucking brilliant dude. And as I've said, I've met him in person. I've, had the opportunity to talk to him, on the podcast. I've not a bad word to say about him, neither as a man or a musician. And this new track by Thou Art Lord serves to reinforce that opinion. But let's get back to it. only one complaint have I got about Hades. And if you listen to this podcast regularly, I think you guys can guess what I'm about to say. I think those drums need some variation. They sound a little bit monotonous to me. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic song. And I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of that EP. And I mean, just how insane is it? We keep going through all of these new releases. As I mentioned to Jesse Mathewson of Ken Mode last week, I have already got a playlist that exceeds my 2021 playlist, which I thought couldn't possibly be topped as far as like just great new music is concerned. And we still have 3 pretty solid months to go, and we know that the end of this year is going to be filled with just a ridiculous amount of good releases. One of them, no doubt, is going to be the new Black Anvil, who have now put out another track off their forthcoming record. The headline here says, Black Anvil unveil video clip for new single. Black Anvil are premiering an official video for 8-Bit Terror, the song from the band's recently released debut album Regenesis, to be released on November the 4th via Season of Mist. The clip was directed by Sean Pierce. I love Black Anvil. I fucking loved that last single that they put out. Let's hear if they have repeated the magic on 8-Bit Terror. I needed to remind myself for a second there of what the last single was called. Castrum Dolores, I believe it is the name. That had exactly the same thing that makes me love this song. It was filled with aggression. There's definitely someone somewhere pissed the guys from Black Anvil off something fierce, because they are not fucking about on both of these new songs they've put out. And the thing that I really like about it, there was always, to me, I've always liked Black Anvil's music very much. But across all their records, there was always a little bit of bloat. Like there were these moments that would just absolutely would take your breath away, and then there's like 1 or 2 songs that you can just kind of throw away. So far, I will absolutely say I hope the rest of the record sounds like these 2 singles that have been put out, because they are both fucking fantastic. Like just top-notch, aggressive, nasty, snarling black metal. Regenesis is apparently the a title that they're taking very literally, because it really does sound like a bit of a rebirth for the band. And thanks to them being on Season of Mist, and thanks to KT being absolutely outstanding at what she does, hopefully I can get one of these guys on the podcast. I'll actually just say as an aside again, I did message her after the Gregor McIntosh interview, and I told her, you had 14-year-old Jackie doing cartwheels for an hour and 15 minutes. I will apologize in advance. I think my inner fanboy came out quite a lot during that conversation. But frankly, should I apologize? I mean, who wouldn't be ecstatic speaking to one of the greatest legends in the history of extreme music? And honestly, for me, like one of the best guitarists to ever live. I mean, technically, he's not, he's no Trey Asathoth or Chuck Schooldiner or any one of those dudes. But good God, what he has done as a guitarist and as a player is something absolutely extraordinary. And I'll talk. We'll talk about it more next week. But just beware. I get a little goggly eyed speaking to him. Anyway, we're talking about Black Anvil, so I will shut the fuck up and let's get back to 8-Bit Terror. I am down with that shit. And let me say as well, kudos to them for not shooting a music video where people are running around in their athletic wear on the beach on some godforsaken Chernobyl coastline beach. With like the enslaved music video from last week. Some old dude trying to trying to let the laxatives kick in. Anyway, let us move on. There's a couple of things here that look like they might be reasonable, but there's a lot to talk about this week. One of the things, and excuse me again, my throat appears to have be a bit croaky today, and I'm not going to bother to fucking start an hour-long segment just because I needed to clear my throat a little bit. So, that aside, I do want to talk a bit about Scott Kelly. I did mention on the socials last week that by the time the news had dropped, I'd already recorded all of the new episode or last week's episode. So that wasn't part of the news rant. But man, for those of you that don't know, Scott Kelly came out, posted a very long multi-paragraph, essentially confession, where he says that he has for years been physically and financially and verbally abusing his wife and kids. He retired from music altogether. Essentially, it's the end of Neurosis. It's certainly the end of Absent in Body, which I continue to rave about. I think there's a kind of a side story playing out here. The side story being there were an awful lot of people online that seemed to act as though he is a hero for coming out and declaring himself an abuser, and kind of almost intimating that his wife somehow deserved it. So those people, I truly hope that their anuses fall out from extreme diarrhea that they pick up over the course of the next, ideally the next couple of days. But I as a fan of Neurosis and as a fan of somebody whose music I connected with in a way that I have connected with very few. I mean, I'm talking a spiritual connection. There was a period in time, and there still is really, where I can't listen to the song "A Sun That Never Sets" without having a lump in my throat. I can barely listen to Locust Star without feeling that same feeling, that like overwhelming sense of emotion, both kind of passion and appreciation for the fact that that you're alive, that you get to hear stuff like this, that you get to experience things like this. So to hear somebody who was responsible for things like that come out with this story, it's a bit of a blow. And I'll have to be very honest with you guys. I don't think that I will not be listening to Neurosis again as a result, because I do concede that, unfortunately, when it comes to great art has throughout the ages been made by very, in some cases, very scummy people. Richard Wagner was a fantastic classical composer, by all accounts, a scumbag. So was Beethoven. There have been countless, timeless pop stars, musical icons throughout the years who, again, by all accounts, were absolutely terrible people. But their music is still loved to this day. If you love the music, do you love the person? No, absolutely not. Do I think that Scott is the kind of guy? Would I have wanted Scott on this podcast, 2 weeks ago? Absolutely. Do I want him on the podcast now? Fuck no. He can fuck right off. If you're abusive towards those who are, firstly entrusted into your care, your kids, and you're abusive towards, your wife, or your husband, you're a bully and a piece of trash, and that's just all there is to it. I sincerely hope that he gets help, because reading his note, I think that he's clearly, having some degree of mental breakdown. I mean, there's a sickness going on there. I suspect it's, some form of, pretty extreme narcissism. I mean, the one thing about narcissism that I understand from what I've read is that it's not something that can really be cured. But either way, hopefully he gets help. More importantly, I hope that his family is safe, and that they, whatever circumstances they find themselves in, his kids and his wife, Honestly, they should be far away from him. If he truly is dedicated towards getting better and towards becoming a better man, then he should have to work his fucking nuts off to prove that he's a changed person, and he should do so with them living at a distance. I don't know whether they can go and move in with a relative, or whether he can, fuck off and go live somewhere else while they live in the home, and he takes care of them. Something to that effect. But yeah, that's my view on that. I was very bummed hearing that news though, because either way, it does somewhat taint the beauty of the music that he helped create. Kudos to the guys from Neurosis for that way that they handled this. I thought that their note that they posted was great. I felt so bad for them as well, because you think to yourself, as I just said, the legacy of that music is tainted to a degree. I mean, that's something that they worked their whole life on, and they, achieved a degree of, of critical reverence off the back of consistent quality and music that you can really hear. They put their fucking heart and soul into. And so for a guy to piss upon that from a dizzying height is that's a rough thing to deal with. But like I said, I think this is where it becomes important to be able to distinguish the art from the artist. And this is probably going to be a debate that's going to rage on for a long time. I saw a load of stuff on the socials where people say they'll never listen to Neurosis again. I get it. If that's how you feel, if you feel strongly that way, do it. But I also know when it comes to Neurosis, there were other men in that band as well. It's not just the work of one musician. Same with Absent and Body. It just so happens the one musician that was the bad egg, in my view, needs to get his act together. Maybe take a few rounds with Khabib Nurmagomedov, or some other sort of badass. I know Khabib would be a guy to put a spanking on him. But yeah. That's my thoughts, folks. Let me know what yours is. A few of you reached out to me and kind of shared your opinions, very much echoing mine. But it does seem the world is just a total fucking cluster at the moment. No other way to describe it. Up is down, black is white. Wrong is right. We'll talk about a little bit more of that as I make my way to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. But anyway, appreciate the good things in your life and appreciate the good people in your life, because increasingly I am coming to realize that they are few and far between. Speaking of good people, the gentlemen in Psychroptic are good people. Jason Pepiat, of course, I had on the podcast not long ago. A absolute man's man, a phenomenal frontman. They also benefit from having one of the greatest drummers in extreme music, Dave Haley. And Todd Stern is a guy who I'm connected to on Facebook. He's been posting quite a lot of, pretty strong opinions on Facebook. And I've been reading these opinions, and I've thought to myself, I like the cut of this man's jib. So hopefully at some point he's going to come on the show as well. He's also in Tombs. So I mean, he's got his feet in two very solid bands. But yeah, the Psychroptic record, Divine Council. If you've not listened to it yet, change that at once. It is fucking fantastic. Probably the best thing that the band have done in at least 10 years. And that's saying something, because they've had a very, very solid run. Band who have had a less solid run, Suicide Silence, who also have released a new single. The song is called You Must Die. The advanced single from Suicide Silence upcoming, Remember You Must Die, full length. Lyrics and song titles and album titles written as though they were concocted by a masturbation-addicted 13-year-old boy. But let's listen to it. I've not heard the song yet, so I might find myself completely baffled by how good it is. So yeah, let's give it a quick spin. Boring as all Get Out. I know that might be for some people. It is just not for me. Not at all, as a matter of fact. Okay, let's move on. Korra have parted ways with 2 new members. It says, atmospheric black metal warrior horde Korra announced the departure of 2 musicians. Wayne Ingram, orchestration specialist, and bassist Daniel Muller have left the band. The band have also announced a new album, on Ananka. More news in due time. Thought there might be some music to listen to there, but since there is not, we shan't dwell on it. Nightmare have parted ways with their vocalist. Not really something that's going to give me sleepless nights. Goatwhore have put out a new single. I have already reached out to the awesome folks, by which I mean Liz at Earsplit Records, about getting one of the Goatwhore men on the podcast. Might be Sammy coming back, might be Ben. I am a huge fan of this band, as everybody knows. It says, Goatwhore have launched a brand new music video for Death from Above, the song taken off their forthcoming full-length album, Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven, which will be released via Metal Blade Records on October the 7th, 2022. Loved the first single. Let's hear what the second single sounds like. If I'm maybe reading too much into this or picking up something that's not there, but there's definitely a very punky vibe to this song in particular. There was a little bit of that on the previous song also, and there always has been with all their stuff, but I definitely feel it's a bit more pronounced on this track. I hope that they haven't strayed too far away from, some of those more kind of, those very typical New Orleans style black metal breakdowns that they do. And I say typical, it's not like New Orleans is teeming with black metal bands, but there is just something New Orleans-ish about the way that they used to do those breakdowns. And then they kind of, Sammy would throw like a cool atmospheric black metal piece on top of that, and it just makes it sound fucking hard. I hope they haven't strayed too far away from that, but I'm down with this. I like it. As I said, it's different flavors of Goatwhore. This is the flavor that I don't like quite as much as the darker, more kind of maybe Celtic Frost type flavor that they do so very, very well. But it does sound very cool. That sounds fucking cool. That part sounds absolutely excellent. I love the breakdown. I love the vibe. Again, very thrashy, very kind of punky, but great stuff. Rock on, Goatwhore. And as I said, I'm very excited about hopefully having one of the guys back on the podcast. It was a blast having Sammy on before. And now that we've got a record to talk about, it's going to be even more fun. Exhumed revealed Drained of Color single and video. As part of their forthcoming studio album, To the Dead, Exhumed present the single/video called Drained of Color. The new outing is set to be released on October the 21st via Relapse Records. The clip was directed by Nico De Luna. Exhumed is a band that have kind of passed me by a little bit, but I know I think Evan is actually friends with one of the guys in the band. He raves of them. Many folks that I know absolutely love them. So let's hear what Drained of Color sounds like. I'm gonna let this drift on. For those of you that are listening to this, basically the kind of opening preamble to the video is like a old 1940s, 1950s movie intro, which again I can dig. But just in case anybody thought, what in the fuck has gone on Into the Necrosphere? What is he playing? It is the intro to the new Exhumed video. So I think that opening riff, it reminds me a little bit of Evelyn by Entombed off of the phenomenal Clandestine record, their best album. That's just, as a side note. When it kind of goes into that slightly grindcore-ish thing there, that's where the song loses me a little bit. I would have liked them to build something, from that main riff, because that main riff is fucking cool. Like really, really good. Does the song find its way in that third sequence? Because it's basically like there's basically like three main riffs we've heard so far. I don't really think it finds its way back there again either. Let's go back to it and hear another minute or so, because who knows, something absolutely killer might be coming up. But so far, I feel like it's a little bit of a missed opportunity, to be honest. Like you start off so well, and then you just kind of lose your footing a little bit. I feel like if I am going to like that one, it's probably going to be a bit of a grower, not a shower. It's definitely something I'm going to have to listen to a couple of times. Might grow on me. I'll tell you one band that didn't need to grow on me is And Oceans. They put out their last record about 2 or 3 years ago. I fucking loved it. Good news here is that they are putting out a new album early next year. It says here in January 27, 2023. Again, shake my head at the fucking misuse of the English language on some of these PR blurbs. But anyway, Finnish Cosmic Metalers and Oceans will release their new, so far untitled album via Season of Mist. The band offers first vibes from Opus. A song, Cloudheads, can be seen below in the official music video format. I mean, this sounds like it was just run straight through Google Translate. And anytime that I try and read it, I am going to sound myself like English is not my native language. But let's listen to Cloudheads. I kind of feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, just based on this, on the name of the song and the fact that they've not kind of introduced themselves as a black metal band, we might see a move away from that symphonic black metal of the last record, which was so fucking cool. My immediate reaction to that is to say, no, what are you doing? But let's hear. All right, I take back everything I said. There's no move away from the black metal stuff. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. This is basically the continuation of Cosmic World Mother. And of course, I mean, they did go down some different routes in their career, which is why that trepidation was there within me. So at least there's some degree of justification for my nervousness, but it was apparently unfounded because that song is superb. Very much looking forward to that. And again, it's going to get us off to a very solid start for 2023. Although if I were a band, I wouldn't probably not release my new record so early in the year. I feel like, if for nothing else, then getting the recognition it deserves. I kind of feel like people tend to sleep on records that come out early on in the year. Maybe it's just me. Yeah, I would maybe, maybe wait, or they should be dropping it right about now. But then again, now it's super crowded as well. So either way, let's hear a couple of seconds more. But first impressions, exceedingly positive. Yeah, excellent. I like that when they're doing the verse, that wall of sound that hits you, thanks to the drummer. Yeah, just fantastic. Very, very much looking forward to that record. Okay, let's move on now to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. Actually, hang fire for just a wee second. I did not actually notice that headline until now. Shining to record new album with new lineup. Swedish depressive black metal outcasts Shining will enter Sonic Train Studios this autumn to record their 11th yet untitled full-length album with a new lineup. The new lineup is Peter Huss on guitar, Niklas Kvarforth on vocals, Charles Hedger, better known as Ghoul of Mayhem, on guitar, Nick Barker on drums. I mean, Jesus Christ, that is a fucking serious lineup. I am a massive fan of Shining, and again, this is one of those separating the artist from the art scenarios. because Niklas, from what I've heard, I've not met the man. And to be fair, I have met Charles, and he's an absolute badass guy. Obviously, you go back to Into the Necrosphere episode 45, I believe he was on. So I can't imagine that he's going to keep company with an absolute dickhead. But I've heard rumors of this dude's behavior towards women after after podcasts, after shows, and happy to be told that I have been actually very happy to be told that I've been misinformed. But what I would say is, if somebody was trying to put the moves on my girl after a show, firstly, knowing her, she's gonna probably give them a fucking smack. But I don't give a shit who you are. You're going to be made an example of, and that's not some Mustaine talk. So, anyways, that was one thing that I had heard. But that being said, I'm anytime Shining put out a new record, I am down. Let's hear what Ugly and Cold sounds like. It says here, the band comments, our dear Mexican friends, due to serious health problems of Niklas Kvarforth for quite a few months and therefore his medically determined inability to travel, came a few days earlier, especially overseas. We have no other option but to cancel our attendance at the mighty Candelabra Metal Fest. So anyway, I wasn't interested in the Candelabra Metal Fest. I was interested in the health problems. So I don't know what is wrong with the dude, but hopefully he's feeling better. Song-wise, I like it. I mean, it's Shining. There's nothing that sounds particularly different to anything that they've done before. It sounds like manic, crazy, wild, dissonant, depressive, as the subgenre suggests. Shining. That's pretty much it. All there is to it, and I like it.
Of every man, woman, and child, all of these disgusting human atrocities, all that you love, I find ugly and
cold. Very much another record to look forward to, and as we speak of depressive things, let's talk very quickly about something a little spicy. For those folks who got a lump in their throat or were staring wistfully at Greta Thunberg as she stood before the United Nations and performed her little routine where she asked us how dare we, claimed that people were dying and accused us of stealing her dreams. Your dreams are about to come true because you're going to get a taste, just a taste, of what the world is going to be like once her vision of a fossil fuel-free planet has been realized. Already, I see many people posting on Twitter and on the socials their electricity bills, and I mean, I'm talking about people that I know as friends or acquaintances, as well as businesses. One bar in Germany posted a bill. I think for the quarter they were being charged 9,800 euro. There's another very famous pub here in London who now claims that their bill has gone up from something like 420 to 6,000 a month. and all around there's just insane news stories, and I mean people are posting the receipts online, so I don't think anybody is making anything up. Goldman Sachs has projected a inflation rate here in the UK of 22%. There's talk of as many as 6 out of 10 pubs in the UK shutting down as a result of this. Industry and manufacturing is going to get massively hard hit, and then I think the thing that's almost more depressing about this whole debacle is that when I go on Twitter and I try and get a pulse, I try and take the pulse of the people, instead of them pointing the finger where it belongs, which is the political class and the leadership that they voted in, people are blaming the energy companies and talking about how energy companies are going to make a windfall and they're making profits and they're terrible and they're exploiting people, etc., etc., as if vast chunks of the world's energy supply was not was not removed from the global energy supply. And now we're in a position where we're basically boycotting Russia so that we can buy Russian liquid natural gas via China, repackaged and sold to us at a fucking tenfold markup. So, I mean, there was an article on Zero Hedge the other day, and the guy went down various apocalyptic scenarios, the fact that people are going to, freeze to death, won't be able to pay their mortgages, won't be able to cover their rent. He spoke about the, manufacturers being hit, the fact that shops, pubs, etc. are going to close down. Widespread social unrest. I spoke about this a couple of months ago, and I said there's a reason why they're busy putting in place all of these laws around, all these anti-riot laws, and then doing so in the name of COVID. It's 100% because they know come October, November time, when people start feeling the pinch of the reality of what's happened, because they didn't feel it as badly this past summer, but when the reality of what's about to hit them hits them, people are going to take to the streets, and they're going to make the London riots look like a fucking trip to Sunday school. But again, like I said, what I find to be the most depressing is that I don't think that there is going to come a time when people are actually, where enough people are going to be clued up on exactly why this happened. And the thing that I find most horrifying is that instead of being fucking incensed at the politicians for doing this, for effectively making a 17-year-old school truant their energy czar, and pursuing a net zero agenda which goes against every fucking shred of common sense a barely sentient being should have, they are now talking about the solution being for the government to nationalize the energy grid and nationalize the energy companies, which is basically like me going on a drunken bender in somebody's car, smashing the thing up, turning up at the back of this person's house, and this person's friend walking out and saying, well, I actually think Jackie should probably own this car from now on. He can drive you around in it, but he really seems like the best person to get the most out of this car. That's how fucking insane it is. But yeah, as I said, this is the world in which we live. And unfortunately, it's going to get absolutely atrocious this Christmas. It's going to get worse next year. The problems that have been created by the government are not problems that can be solved in the space of a couple of months. They can bail people out, which they're most likely going to have to end up doing, but that just adds to the national debt. And what are they bailing you out with? They're bailing you out with your own fucking money. They're just going to end up having to take more tax from people, and that's just going to stifle the economy even worse. And then you look at what's going on in the US, it's not much better there. The United States this past week basically had they basically became the living embodiment of George Orwell's Animal Farm. And Joe Biden, with his little red backdrop speech and being flanked by Marines, had delivered his some animals are all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others speech. Jimmy Dore did a fantastic breakdown of that whole speech, and Jimmy Dore is a left-wing guy, a classical liberal. Kurt Metzger, who's his co-host on that show, He himself is also very left. I don't personally think this is a left or right thing. This is a fucking common sense thing. And I mean, they really are doing the animal thing down to the aggressive revision of history that they're now pursuing. This week, they had us believe that it was the Republicans that had been pushing for schools to be closed, even though there is a litany of articles talking about how opening schools is racist, opening schools misogynist, the usual tropes thrown out by the Democrats when you say something against their vision or their opinion. They had us believe that it was not them that pushed for the police to be defunded. And they also had us believe, by way of Joe Biden's ridiculous speech, that if you deny the election, as they had done for every year since 2016, up to 2020, then you were in fact not a patriot, but a terrorist. And for me, like I said, it's not a left and right thing. You should, if you're a person of principle and you read the news, surely you can put two and two together and go, something is not right here. I mean, this to me is no different than the Republicans trying to whitewash their many sins. It's just fucking mind-boggling to me. And again, I think Mike Hill posted something on his Instagram a little while back, which I think hit the nail on the head. It was something like, if you believe in a politician, or if you love a politician, it's like believing the stripper actually likes you. I think if you follow politics in 2022, if you consider yourself to be in any way informed about what's going on, and you have a shred of trust or confidence or faith in 99.9% of politicians, you are delusional. You are absolutely delusional. I've said it many times across the 3 years that this podcast has been going. They do not give a fuck about you. They care about remaining in power. And so right now, especially in the West, their version of leadership is essentially doing whatever they think is going to get them reelected. What is the way to respond to this? What's the way to deal with this? I have no fucking idea. I just know one thing, and that is that I'm not going to be a sucker. I'm not going to be lied to. I'm not going to sit here believing every single thing that they say and falling along with whatever old nonsense they try and drive. I know that if the government manages something, it generally mismanages something, which is why I think nationalizing the energy grid to solve an energy crisis that the government created is the fucking stupidest thing I have ever heard anyone suggest in my entire life. I mean, it's literally on a par with telling me run into the wall multiple times. It's going to turn you into an Albert Einstein level genius. But we go on. Megadeth's Kiko Laureiro read Dave Mustaine's autobiography immediately after joining the band. You would hope that warned him to steer clear of Dave's bad side, because he is, after all, a martial arts master. Sepultura performs Roots Bloody Roots with Brazilian Symphony Orchestra at Rock in Rio 2022 Festival. John Bush and Chuck Billy perform Anthrax and Testament classics with Metal Allegiance at Rock in Rio. If you're new to the podcast, let me say this. John Bush, the superior Anthrax vocalist, I spoke to him at the London Astoria back in, I think it was 2003 or 2004. And I remember going back to the Astoria to see them the year after when he was still in the band. And he walked past me as he was walking into the venue and turned around. He'd only met me once, seen me, saw me a year later, and immediately spun around. I was like, "Hey, Jackie, how's it going?" Stood, spoke to me, chopped it up for 5 minutes. And for me, that was a stand-up thing to do. And it told me everything. It gave me the measure of the man. And I think not only is he a great guy, I think he's a fantastic vocalist. And as I said, I personally think all of those old Anthrax songs sound better with him singing it. He's definitely better on stage as well than old poodle hair Belladonna. And Chuck Billy, we all know my thoughts on Chuck. He's fantastic. Corey Taylor says Metallica's Black Album taught him a very valuable lesson. I would assume the lesson is that apparently you don't have to be a vampire to suck. But now, the Black Album is not bad. Of course, when it came out, I was 11 years old, I think. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, I remember hearing Enter Sandman for the first time and thinking it was the greatest thing that Satan ever spawned on the face of the earth. And I used to I used to attempt to woo many a lady whilst Nothing Else Matters was playing in the background. I think nowadays there are still songs I like. There are some songs I think are absolutely terrible. I think that Through the Never isn't a good song. Struggle Within is awful. Holier Than Thou is mucky muck, but there are some very cool stuff on it. Wherever I May Roam, great. I do love Nothing Else Matters. I think The God That Failed is great. My Friend of Misery is great. There's good songs on there. And there are also good songs on Load. It's on from Reload onwards where things started getting very, very, very dicey. And of course, you kind of have to, if you want to enjoy those two records, Load and the Black Album, you do have to completely disassociate your brain from any kind of expectations in line with the first four. We all know that. Anyways, is there anything else? Hymns Ville Valo releases Echolocate Your Love solo single. I don't even want to imagine how terrible that'll be. Chris Jericho injures throat. Fozzy postpones tour dates. I would hope that doesn't preclude him from anything on AEW. Lamb of God's Mark Morton says drummer Art Cruz stretched out quite a bit on Omen's album. If I were Art, I would stretch myself out of that band because Omen's, from everything I've heard so far, is shite. Friends, we have passed the hour mark. I suspect we may have passed the hour mark some time ago. And on that note, I am going to wrap up the news for this week. Thank you so much if you have stuck it out until the bitter end. You have my respect, my love, my adulation. Next week, I am back with Greg McIntosh of Paradise Lost and Strigoi, formerly also of Valenfire. We got a little into why Valenfire split up. We spoke a lot about the new Strigoi record, and we spoke an awful lot about Paradise Lost. So if you're a fan of the man, if you're a fan of any of his music, make sure that you return next week. In the meantime, whatever it is that you're doing, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Did have one DMT trip way back, like maybe the second or third or fourth way back, where it was completely different. It's the only one I've ever had like that, and it was completely different. And the way I put it to myself was the big people were home. And it was an entirely different feeling. And many people, actually, I've never quite had this myself, but many people report DMT trips where they break in on an entity who is not pleased at all and demands to know how the hell you got there. Hyperdimensional perception, and you're actually seeing worlds and places that truly exist somewhere scattered through